During World War II, Imperial Japan's expansion left deep and lasting trauma across many Asian countries. Civilians faced extreme violence, forced labor, and massacres that are still denied to this day. That's why they were called the Yellow Devils.
But how can a country like that make such cute things? Oh my god.
Well, this was their plan all along, to change the image of the historic war crimes they did, and they reached it. A lot of people think that this is just a conspiracy theory, but this is actually a real thing. It's a soft power to create a cool Japan. Now, when you think of Japan, you don't think of this, you think of this. But now they have another plan. A 50-year bizarre plan that included an insane project that sounds like it's out of fiction, because it literally is out of fiction. And if they manage to radically change their brand image, I trust that they can reach this goal too. The goal being winning the World Cup. Now, Japan winning the World Cup sounds like a bold claim, right? Even with this project of theirs, who are they to do that? We've never heard anything football in Japan in real life. No, but we hear football is Brazil, Spain, Germany, England. Well, recently Japan has beaten all of them. They've dominated Germany, conquered Brazil in a stunning 3-2 comeback, and even marched in Wembley Stadium to silence 80,000 fans by beating England on their home soil. Spain's coach Luis Enrique perfectly described this nightmare after their defeat against Japan in the World Cup when he said,
Nada que perder, pues decide arriesgar al máximo y han pasado como si fueran aviones.
This isn't just a golden generation, and it definitely isn't luck. This is the result of a 5-decade master plan, combined with a real-life anime mentality and born from the most heartbreaking tragic stories in Japanese sport history. Because this story doesn't start in the Japanese Football Federation, it starts with a television and a child watching an anime character kick a ball so hard it disappears into the horizon. To understand where Japanese football is today, you have to understand where it came from. And it came from very, very far back. For centuries, Japan applied sakoku during the Edo period, a total isolation policy that punished crossing the border with death. When it opened its door in 1853, football arrived with the English. It took decades to become popular. In 1929, they joined FIFA. In 1936, they went to the Berlin Olympics. They beat Sweden, but lost heavily to Italy. So it existed, but it didn't compete. And World War II made everything worse for them. Their defeat, the FIFA suspension, and the American occupation that installed baseball as the main sport in the country. Football was left in company leagues where players signed as employees, not footballers. And the level was so mediocre that the public preferred to watch something else. But in the 80s, something happened that shaped how football in Japan will be for the next decade. It was seen by a child on a television. In 1983, when Japanese television aired the anime Captain Tsubasa, the original manga by Yuichi Takahashi sold nearly 90 million copies. And what it did for Japanese football was something no marketing campaign or government program ever achieved. This simple anime story about a boy who dreams of winning the World Cup changed everything. It made millions of Japanese kids fall in love with the game. In fact, Captain Tsubasa is the main reason legendary global superstars like Fernando Torres, Iniesta, and even Kylian Mbappe were inspired to play football. It convinced an entire generation of children that they wanted to play football. Hidetoshi Nakata, considered the greatest Asian player of all time, said that Captain Tsubasa was the reason he chose football over baseball as a child. The same was said by Keisuke Honda and Shinji Kagawa. The entire generation grew up wanting to be Captain Tsubasa. But here is the detail that few people mention. Tsubasa is a midfielder, creative, team-oriented, and excellent in link-up play. The direct consequence of an entire generation wanting to be him is that Japan became a nation of technical, disciplined midfielders. The anime didn't reflect Japanese football philosophy, it created it. Around that time, the New York Times reported that football was beginning to overtake baseball among Japanese youth. It was no longer just a hobby sport, but was starting to become a national sport loved by everyone. But by 1992, Japan's first major breakthrough came. For the first time in its history, Japan hosted the AFC Asian Cup and won it. Things were looking promising for them. Maybe now they can finally achieve that Captain Tsubasa dream and win the World Cup. But every great zero-to-hero story has a tragedy in the middle. For Japan, that dark moment happened in October 1993. It is known today as the tragedy of Doha. Japan was just 90 seconds away from qualifying for their first ever World Cup. The dream was right there, but in stoppage time, only 90 seconds left. Iraq scored a heartbreaking equalizer. In an instant, the dream was dead. The Japanese players collapsed on the grass in tears. It was a nightmare for them, because all it took was an instant for the dream that all those players had as kids in front of that TV to be crushed. Among the players collapsing in tears that night was a 25 years old midfielder named Hajime Moriyasu. Remember this name. We're gonna come back to it later. At that time, nobody knew that one day he would return to shape the future of Japanese football itself. He lived that nightmare, he felt that pain, and it changed how he looked at football forever. January 1st, 2005. This marks the day that the Keikaku was first released. Because Japan is a country of deep planning, the JFA published something that I think nobody had ever published before in football history. An official historic document by the slogan, "A dream worth having." The document had one single promise: win the World Cup in 2050. Actually no, not just win it, host the World Cup in Japan and win it with the Japanese national team just like they did once with the Asian Cup. This document was not just a media statement, it was a bold and detailed roadmap that defined the ideal state Japan wanted to reach. In order to host and win the World Cup, they are aiming to expand the football community to reach 10 million active members in what they called the Japanese football family: fans, players, coaches, and referees. Japanese leadership understood that winning a World Cup was mathematically impossible without a huge social base and a strong economic foundation capable of continuously producing talent and funding. And that's why in recent years, they brought technology in the game. They created something called the JFA Passport, a massive digital database that tracks every single kid who plays football in Japan. It records their skill, their physical growth, and even their injuries from childhood all the way to the professional level. They built a machine that never stops producing talents. But building a system of clubs in databases only creates the physical and technical framework. To build the soul of a footballing nation, they needed something much deeper. Something like Captain Tsubasa that taught Japan how to love football in the 80s. But to get to that something, they had to learn one final painful lesson. Loving teamwork and not always enough. It's the 2018 World Cup in Russia. Round of 16. Japan was playing against Belgium's golden generation in the city, Rostov. It's minute 14-8. Japan strikes first, 1-0. Minute 52. They do it again. Japan 2, Belgium 0. For a few unbelievable minutes, Japan wasn't surviving anymore. They were actually on the edge of making history and reaching the World Cup quarterfinals for the first time. But Belgium refused to collapse. Minute 62. Belgium pulls one back. Minute 74, the equalizer. 2-2. And then came the moment Japanese fans will never forget. Minute 94, the final seconds of the extra time of the match. Japan wins a corner. Most teams in that moment would slow the game down, protect extra time, and play safe. Japan didn't. They sent bodies forward, they wanted to win. The corner gets cleared. Belgium's goalkeeper Courtois catches the ball and immediately launches one of the fastest counterattacks in World Cup history. The entire field opens up. It was only 14 seconds in Rostov.
Bruyne to lead this attack. Japan desperate to cover the spaces. They can't do so.
Minute 94.
Lukaku
Goal to
is the
Belgium.
winner.
Belgium 3, Japan 2. From one corner kick to elimination. The heartbreak was so massive that Japan produced a documentary called 14 Seconds in Rostov to analyze every single mistake made in those 14 seconds. Through this analysis, they discovered a deep cultural problem: the 10 midfielders curse. Captain Tsubasa wasn't just a bliss for Japanese football, it was also a curse. Everyone in the team, regardless of their assigned position, still acted like a midfielder. Add this to the cultural concept called wa, which means harmony and extreme teamwork, and you got yourself amazing loyal team players, but no selfish instinct to score. They realized that to win, sometimes you need a monster on the pitch, not just a good soldier. Well, it turns out a mangaka found exactly how to change that and turned it into one of the best-selling manga today. In that same year, 2018, Blue Lock manga was released. The premise: Japan fails to win the World Cup, and the federation hires an eccentric coach who locks young strikers in a facility with one rule: only the most selfish survives. The author Miyuki Kaneshiro had something specific to say with this manga. Japanese people tend to value cooperation and harmony, and I believe the root problem of Japanese football is a lack of selfish players due to the excessive cooperation. In other words, 40 years of Captain Tsubasa turned Japan into a nation of collective midfielders. Blue Lock asked whether that model has a ceiling, whether to win a World Cup you need something Japan's way hasn't produced yet, an individual genius, someone who breaks the system when the match demands it. The entire philosophy of Blue Lock is about destroying the idea of over teamwork for strikers. It teaches young players to be ruthless, to have a massive ego in front of the goal, and to be absolutely selfish when it matters most. The question didn't stay on paper. In May 2026, the JFA launched Future Camp, an international scouting program directly inspired by Blue Lock to identify players of Japanese descent around the world. The JFA didn't just ignore this pop culture trend, they officially collaborated with Blue Lock. They used this aggressive philosophy to literally reprogram the minds of the new generation. They wanted to create a striker who doesn't apologize for taking the shots. And now Blue Lock and the International Scouting Future Camp it inspired might be planting the next genius, a more selfish player, more decisive and more willing to break the system. The anime that once questioned Japan's way is now becoming part of Japan's way. And just as Captain Tsubasa helped shape how Japan played football for decades, Blue Lock is starting to shape how Japan wants to play football from now on. But that's not the only gain that you can have from an anime like Blue Lock. Remember, in the 2005 Keikaku, they are aiming to expand the football community to reach 10 million active members, including players and also fans. Sports anime was the way. The genre of sports anime and manga has always been more than entertainment in Japan. It is a cultural engine. Japan national volleyball team is number 4 internationally for a reason. That is not built with a single policy, because no one cares about that. It is built with stories, with characters that people want to become, because nothing is more inspiring than a story. Now, we have a squad filled with strong, disciplined and even selfish players. We have a huge fan base for football in Japan, but we still need one final piece of the puzzle. The piece that connects all the other pieces. Because behind every great machine, there is a mastermind. For Japan, that mastermind is their coach, Hajime Moriyasu. Yes, that same 25 years old midfielder who once stood on the field in tears after the heartbreak of Doha. He didn't forget that pain. He rebuilt around it. And over time, he turned it into something far more dangerous. Control. Because in international football, most teams can be categorized quickly. Japan under Moriyasu doesn't fit either box. Experts call it a chameleon tactic, and it's exactly what makes them unpredictable. Japan doesn't obsess over possession. They don't need to dominate the ball or play pretty football for 90 minutes. They just need one moment. When Japan beat Spain 2-1 at the 2022 World Cup, they had only 17% possession, the lowest ever recorded for a winning team in the World Cup history. But that wasn't weakness. It was design. They invite pressure, they let opponents believe they are in control, and then the moment a mistake appears, they strike. Structurally, it's even more extreme. They shift from a 3-4-2-1 defensive base into a 3-2-5 attacking shape, flooding forward with numbers, creating overloads and sometimes sending up to 7 players into the box at once. It doesn't look like possession football. It doesn't look like counter-attack football either. It looks like a system that waits, studies, and then destroys you in transition. So, all the planning, the anime philosophy, and the tragic backstories have led to this exact moment, the 2026 World Cup. With 45 years of planning behind it, with a generation raised by one anime and questioned by another, this team is fighting a ghost. They are fighting a dark curse that has haunted them for over 20 years. Back in 2005, when the JFA promised the world that they would lift the World Cup trophy by the year 2050, a lot of people laughed at them. But looking at this terrifying, unstoppable machine they have built for 2026, nobody is laughing anymore. The Samurai Blue are ready to leave a mark on the World Cup that nobody on Earth will ever forget.